If you grew up in the 70s, what was the must-have Christmas toy for a specific year? We're going to go through every single year from 1970 up to 1979. What was the hot Christmas toy for that season? I put up a poll over on my YouTube channel about different years. We put Cabbage Patch Kids, Tickle Me Elmo, and the Razor Scooter. So obviously those aren't going to come into play here in the 70s, but we're going to kick things off with 1970, Lite-Brite. That was the hot Christmas toy that year. Did you have one of these, Alan?
I didn't, but I always wanted one. I love the commercial for Lite-Brite.
I remember having one, and I remember it was always a pain in the ass with the pegs because those things would get lost. You would start piecing something together because you would take the piece of paper, you would put it onto the actual Lite-Brite, and then you would plug in the different colored lights. And if you were missing one, it looked like your duck was missing an eyeball or its bill was wonky shaped or something like that. So if you are concerned about that, though, it's not the same, but they do have apps for tablets and stuff out there where it's like a Lite-Brite app, I guess, if that's what you want. All right, moving on to 1971. This is probably the oddest of the toys that we've covered so far. Space hoppers, also known as hippity hops and hop balls.
The heck?
So it's basically a giant rubber ball that had some handles on it, and you would bounce around. So you know what I'm talking about when I say that, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yes.
I remember, I never had one of these. Did you ever have one?
Mm-hmm. Nope.
Okay, so I remember it was an 80s movie where this couple is on a date, and they end up bouncing around the toy store on something similar to this. I want to say it was Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead with Christina Applegate.
Yes, I think that's what it was.
Okay, so if I'm right or wrong, let me know down in the comments because I'm trying to remember if that was it. And I tried to look it up before this, but I ran out of time, and I figured somebody here who's watching this video will comment down below and let me know. All right, moving on to 1972. This is a game, this has to be a staple for most people, regardless of who you are or how your family is. The game of Uno. That was the hot selling toy that Christmas. And you played Uno, right?
Yeah.
You guys have Uno in the house?
No.
Have you ever played, there's a version where it's, and this obviously came out later, where there's a card dispenser in the middle. And one of the cards in the deck, it's like you have to hit this button X amount of times. And each time you hit it, it literally spits cards at you. It goes, and it throws these cards out at you. And that's how many, so rather than draw 4, it's however many cards that it spits out at you. So this game was created in a barbershop by a barbershop owner, and they were originally sold out of his shop. All right, 1973. This one's a little more generic, but it's walkie-talkies. That was the big Christmas item.
Oh.
And I think every boy at some point was probably given walkie-talkies. Were you given walkie-talkies at some point when you were a kid?
Actually, no.
I think I was, and the sad thing is that you were always disappointed. The range was never what you thought they were. So Alan didn't live that far from me, but there's no way walkie-talkies were going to have that range when he and I were growing up. We would have had to have like a CB radio or something like that. And there was just a few years ago, we did a gift exchange on the morning show that I was on, and it was when I think The Force Awakens was released. Okay. So I had bought Buzz, the host of the show, a set of walkie-talkies, and they were set like the stormtroopers from the Force Awakens. It looked like their helmets was what the walkie-talkie looked like. But there was a reason that I bought him this, because what would happen is when we were in commercial break, he would be down the hallway getting coffee or checking his mail and doing something else. And I mean, truly on the other side of the building. So what I told him is take the walkie-talkie with you, and I can be in touch when you need to be back in the studio. Like, hey, you got 60 seconds left. Dude, these walkie-talkies, there was like 10 feet. Like, he was truly in the studio next to me, and I could barely hear what was going on. Is how terrible the range was on these things.
Well, you got toy ones. That's why.
Yeah, I know. I had high hopes. And there was a limit. It's not like I could go spend $50 on walkie-talkies for him. So instead, ultimately, it was just me yelling down the hallway to get him to hurry his ass up to get back to the studio. All right, 1974, Tonka toy trucks was the hot Christmas item. Now, the name Tonka comes from the Dakota Sioux. Do you know what Tonka means, or can you guess what Tonka means?
Miniature.
No, go the opposite.
Large.
Basically, yeah, it means great or big is what Tonka means. All right, 1975, this has to be the worst one. If you got this Christmas morning, this had to have been the absolute worst toy you could possibly get. The Pet Rock. Like, that was the hot selling toy. Think about that. Here's a rock in a box.
Oh,
and for anybody who doesn't know, this was an actual thing. They sold for $4 a piece. Gary Dahl was the creator. He's the one that packaged these things and made him a millionaire.
Yeah.
The Pet Rock. All right, 1976. Connect 4 was the big Christmas toy.
Oh,
that
wow.
year. Now, there's another one that I'm pretty sure a lot of households have had at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you know that there are over 4.5 trillion possible game board positions?
Yeah.
I mean, think about all the different ways that you can do that. Were you ever good at Connect 4?
No, not really.
You
I don't really play it much.
You know what the secret is?
What's that?
Distract the other person. Just distract the shit out of them. When they're trying to figure out where they're going to put their piece, don't shut up. Talk the entire goddamn time. And then the hope is they're not going to see what you're planning on doing. And I believe it was also, you weren't allowed to do this, but I would always play with people who did, where they would get up and they would look, like they would go look at the board from your side just to see if like they could see what you were working on. Because obviously it's going to be completely reversed from what you were looking at, but I think that's cheating. All right, 1977. This is a big one. I'm just going to guess if Alan can guess.
I'm going to see Star Wars toys.
It is. It's 100% Star Wars toys. You get the belt.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you didn't actually get a Star Wars toy. Because remember, you had to send away for them. The Star Wars toys didn't release until I believe the Star Wars toys didn't release until 1978. They didn't have them ready. So what they ended up having to do is you would get a certificate that Christmas morning that said you're going to get this toy coming up here in a few months when they finally release these toys. And they retailed for $9.99.
Holy shit.
I had way more Star Wars toys than I thought I did. I had Darth Vader, I had R2-D2, I had Chewbacca. Chewbacca was the one that went everywhere with me. I always had that thing in my hand. And then I also remember, I'm going to see if you can remember this one character from Star Wars. It's the robot from Jabba's palace, the one that is basically torturing the other robots. Remember, you got the little droid that's upside down with his little feet wiggling, and he goes, and it burns the shit out of the bottom of his feet. I've got the robot that was torturing him. That was the weird random Star Wars toy that I had. How many did you have?
I didn't have a lot. I mean, I mainly had Han Solo because Han Solo was my hero. Back in the day, I had Chewbacca, of course, because I had to have him. I had the Millennium Falcon.
Oh, lucky.
My brother had the X-wing that came with Luke in the pilot outfit.
Oh,
I had like a bunch of random ones too. Like I didn't have like stormtroopers. I didn't have Darth Vader. I had like one of the Imperial guards from Return of the Jedi. I had the Emperor, who promptly blew up with firecrackers. That was really fun.
Yeah, I wonder how many Star Wars toys ended up meeting their maker by either getting blown up or we shot mine with BB guns.
Oh, there you go.
Was what ultimately happened with mine. And I forgot, I also had the Luke Skywalker Hoth edition.
Oh, nice.
The one that's all bundled up. I had that Luke Skywalker. All right, so that was 1977. 1978, the hot toy for that Christmas was the game Simon. The short-term memory game where you got the beeps and the boops and the colors and everything else like that. There was a huge midnight release party in 1978 for this game. And it seems like it was a really odd place, especially for a kid's game, to have this. It was a movie that had Michael Myers. Ryan Felipe, whatever the hell his name was.
Yeah.
Studio 54. There was a big midnight release party for the game
for
Simon at Studio 54. All right, now we're wrapping up the 1970s here. We get to our first video game console here as the hottest Christmas item. Can you think of what video game console was 1979?
What was it? The Atari, whatever.
VCS. Yeah, I'll give you credit for that. You get the belt. Yep, that was the first gaming console, and it sold over 1 million units in 1979. Now, as we progress through, we're going to do the 80s, we're going to do the 90s, but then from 2000 on, a lot of the toys end up being either video game consoles or something related to video games, whether it was the Wii or the Rock Band or Guitar Hero or stuff like that. Those were the hot items. Really quick story here before we wrap up this video. I do remember my parents went to try to get me a Wii for Christmas, that hot Christmas when the Wii was the big thing. They were in line at Best Buy. God bless my parents for going through this for a 20-something-year-old son. To get a Wii. And in the line, this guy had cut in front of other people, and nobody really noticed. So as they're going through and they're letting people grab a Wii to go purchase it, this guy gets to the front of the line, and as he's getting ready to get one of the managers walks over and escorts him away. And they basically pulled him aside, and my parents could hear the conversation. They told him to go, "We have you on tape cutting in line. And so you're out. Like, you got to leave the store." And the guy got super pissed. Yeah. I mean, you worked in retail for a while. Did you ever run into anything like that?
We never had any line cutters, none that I noticed. But the thing is, because I don't believe your parents came to my Best Buy, but the managers took that all very, very, very serious, like line management, ticket management, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, they would be watching that kind of stuff. Never happened in my store because we always handled it pretty well. We would always have tickets, so you didn't have to. You only had to wait in line for the tickets, and then after that, you're kind of free to do whatever you wanted.
So
until the store opened.
I was gonna say, so would then they announce like the ticket over the loudspeaker, like you can come pick this up now? Is that how did that work?
No, so what we would do is when people first lined up, we would have a certain amount. We have the amount of tickets according to the amount of consoles that we had. So we would just start at the front of the line and then hand out the tickets.
Okay.
And then when we were out of tickets, that was it. So whoever didn't get a ticket, unfortunately, not getting a console. And then once we handed out the tickets, they could go eat breakfast. They could go home for a little bit, do whatever. And then once the store opened, they could come in. As long as they had the ticket, they can get a console.
Oh,
for that day.
Yeah. Very smart, very smart. Yeah, yes. I worked. I did a gig when I was in Florida for the Xbox 360 release down at a Best Buy down there, and I was always adamant about waiting when it comes to new consoles or when it comes to any sort of new technology, because there's going to be bugs, there's going to be issues, there's going to be things like I never quite understood the desire to be the first one to have it. But then again, I became super jaded on a lot of this stuff because either something wouldn't function properly right out of the gate, or like for all of the times that we would play Battlefield and that first weekend when everybody would be looking to play Battlefield and the servers would constantly crash because they didn't have the proper amount of bandwidth ready to go, and so you were never able to get into a game. So that jaded me a lot. But one more really quick story when the PlayStation 2 came out, because this one still just burned into my brain. It was a news story where they were following people who purchased the PS2 right when it came out, and they had this guy that was being interviewed by the reporter, and he was so excited, and he's just giddy, and he's excited, and he's running, and so they have him running away like with the PS2 in his hands, and he goes to click his heels, like jump and click his heels.
Yeah.
Trips and falls and drops the PS2. Now, it still technically could have functioned because of the packaging, but it's like, oh my God. Like that guy's heart had to have broken in that moment.
I'm kidding.
All right, so we're going to get to 80s and 90s coming up for the hottest Christmas toys by year for the Christmas. So obviously we're going to be getting to the Cabbage Patch Kid and Tickle Me Elmo and all that other stuff. And then don't forget, we do have the Christmas specials that we're going to be covering, How the Grinch Stole Christmas and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Charlie Brown Christmas, all of those fun things. So make sure you're clicking like down there. Comment down below if we got something wrong, or if maybe there was a toy that you had that was similar to one of these, or what it was like when you opened up one of these. And make sure you click the bell as well so that you're able to get the notifications when a new video comes up or when we go on live.